Alrighty, let's get into a daily trading recap for this Thursday, the 21st of October, 2021. A little red day after two trades on TLRY and then HX as well, but sticking to my plan, sticking to what I wanted to do, not going crazy with chasing type of action. Still really A rating in my book for what I wanted to see out of my mental capacity. Not forcing any trades, understanding it was kind of, I had that assumption going into the market as well when I pulled up my scanner for the first time, like, oh, this could be another one of those days of slower days of not taking a trade or just having to look at watching paint dry. Some interesting stuff happening around the market, but we'll get into it in a few seconds here. Let's go over housekeeping, of course. SPY, little 0.26% up day as well. This is seventh green day in a row now on decreasing volume, which doesn't boast well, I think, for the trend of what's being established here. Again, if it's like, oh, hey, just kidding, we faked you out, we're actually going to go right back in this previous straight up trend that we were going in. We got you, haha. It was just a little practical joke. With the volume that's coming in, especially with the volume that's traveling within the first minute there, 308,000, I just really do not see this trend holding up. Or if it's going to go right back in that trend, I wouldn't deny it, of course, for how manipulated and how crazy this stock market is overall. But it's just, yeah, interesting to see that this trend, I do not feel the strength of this trend is going to be there, at least for the market. And even looking at the Qs too, we're still pulling in a little bit of a lower lows. It's coming, pretending to do the same thing as what the SPY is doing, but that's just what I'm seeing as of right now, especially with how many green days the SPY's been putting in. As for market dollar volume, NASDAQ, we're looking at $170 billion volume. We're after 24 minutes after the close here, so it's still pretty on the low side, but a little bit higher than what it's been. I see $200 billion volume mark, pretty average, and then OTC's $2.5 billion mark. So a little bit on the low side for what it's been doing the past few days in the OTCs. Let's get into the trades there on TLRY now then. This was a very decent watch for me. Of course, this is a former runner, the weed sector play. I think it's more of a real company. I don't look at this more as a sketchy, fake scam company. I do feel like it's actually real, similar to CGCC type of action, but of course, always never buying in on the belief of the company's actually real and becoming an investor, just sticking to what the chart says, what the trades present themselves to be. So this seemed like kind of like an awesome third day surge-ish type of pattern, or just even more so a technical style play to look on the daily with a little bit clearer picture, looking past the words and the arrows here. Get a nice little first green day with big volume. Second day, kind of a rest day, but still underneath that initial high of day from that first day, and just saying, hey, we're still kind of above VWAP. We're building with strength here, giving it more time to accumulate, more eyes, more scanners to pick it up and draw people in. Of course, the former runner name also brings in the recognition of this ticker for what it was. It had the news initially on that first day for I think it mentioned on CNBC. It's also got something new going on in Canada, different things going on. So lots of good things going forward. As for news catalysts, so out of the gate, looking for any amount of strength, volume coming in to push this thing. Pre-market wasn't the most hot, but it certainly doesn't really have any bearing or weight hard on what happens in market hours. We see a nice quick little rise within the first minute. Second minute tries to battle around VWAP once again, but still holds around that first minute candle high. I see that third minute candle still kind of stagnating. Buyers and sellers really just kind of waiting on the sidelines almost. It's funny to see on this volume chart as well too, just that third minute candle, it's like, okay, which way are we going to go? Everybody's waiting to react off of that. So, and then we get that nice push with volume to the upside where I get an entry at 11.58, which is a very nice fill. I was surprised I actually filled right there because it was battling 11.6. So good to see that for what that entry was. And then as immediately pretty much started to sell, I took off half once we got to the new territory above those high of days, or that 11.8 area. Of course, that I don't want to always keep focusing, as my evolution of a trader, as the market has slowed down from that 2020 area. I've done everything I can to in realizing and also straying away from trying to force 10% moves only. Like, oh, I'm not going to take anything less than 10%. It's got to be 10% minimum that I take my first exit and then let the rest run from there. But I'm happy at least it goes to 10%, versus what all the millionaires are doing and taking what's there and just not trying to force a big percentage move out of this, but take the money when you can, not when you have to, and trade the trade too. This one, of course, is not the most awesome percentage move. Wasn't the most volatile. It looks very easily played out and kind of followed very nice trend lines of how it ran up here. It was a little bit slower for what it was doing at specific price levels, which is why I think I took off a few more times than I should have, but it respected VWAP well. It showed, very nice price action of, hey, we're getting toppy here with big volume. Now we're going to pull back a little bit. Okay, we're faking out. Now we're getting a new high of day 2. So following along the lines of what I guess should be good trading guidelines for how a chart should move in a sense. But of course, with that comes it's not the most volatile. It's not the most awesome percentage-wise. Of course, it's very liquid. $342 million volume on the day for this former runner. It's a bigger. What's the market cap on this one, actually? Yeah, 5.1 billion market cap. So yeah, once we get to that pretty much immediate green spike after my entry there, I'm looking to take off as it was hesitating a little bit as soon as we got to this 11.8-ish area, which is where this little high of day region was. So once we get to that point, I'm thinking, okay, this could be a good point to take at least half of off to secure the opportunity here if for some reason it starts to tank once again, because it does have a crazy amount of overhead for the crazy run it did at the start of 2021, for how many times it's tried to do that again. Now it's just in this dead crow pattern here. You got to respect the overhead if it's still there and lingering, and not just try to be pie in the sky type of ideals looking for this thing to go to $20. So just taking profits, opportunities as they're there. I take off half once we get, like I mentioned, above that 11.3 area. Let it ride a little bit more, take off, just mixing up the sizes each time with each of these little candles. Maybe I took off 5 shares here, 10 shares here, as it was breaking this little former low on that pullback. I thought potentially it could have sped up as it broke through the bottom of VWAP. So say, hey, let's take off a few more little profits here. But it ended up holding VWAP actually pretty decently. You get another spike to the upside that creates a new high a day. Sell more into some of that with strength. You get a big volume candle there signifying the end of the trend. You get another decent little bounce off of VWAP, which I had like 5 shares left. So saying, hey, I'm looking, if this thing continues to go green for the rest of the day, that's what I'm holding these 5 shares for. And I know when I trade bigger size, the meat, not necessarily the majority of my trade, but a lot of meat could still be on the bone for these style of trades where it's in this 3rd-day surge pattern. And the morning session really doesn't encompass all of the trading on the day too. So I want to keep at least some on for the rest of the day. If it does want to pick up some legs, hit some more scanners, get some more attention for the afternoon session. But it was creating this higher low here after that 3rd high of day attempt on this one. And it was just, the bid was not looking strong, especially around that $12 hold level. So I said, I'll just cut it right at 12. So cut it there. It lasted a few more minutes, pulled off again, and then faked out the shorts again for another 4th high of day. But then ended up pulling back more, and that was all she wrote for it today, at least for the morning session and afternoon session. So I doubt if this thing has any more legs going into tomorrow. It's certainly going to need the volume to push this to the upside. Certainly could. If it gets for how much news it's already put out, it may be more diluted if any more news comes out to try and push this thing higher. But it'll be interesting to watch this one if it does have any lingering effects or any more higher price action after this day today. So 2.6% trade in total. Again, nothing. Do I even really consider that a single? Probably not as a 2.6% trade. But when it's big money, that's trading big position size, at least a 2.6% trade can still be pretty decent. So I'm not angry at it. I'm not trying to shy away from it. Traded the chart as it was there. But yeah, obviously we're looking for better percentage moves from that for that HX we got to talk about as well. One of the 2 pretty crazy ones coming into today, or the one crazy one coming into today, and then we got a new crazy one as of today. But HX hard selling this whole day, just bleeding and dying off after that crazy move from yesterday. Absolutely parabolic, and today just sank. Knife in the heart, kill ya. Bowen mentioned in the pre-market prep, hey, looking for a dip and rip on this one. And I'm going, yeah, potentially could see a dip and rip on this one. And I think a lot of other millionaire names in the chat too were like, it could go either way. It could have hard sell off. It could just be, kind of choppy, volatile the whole rest of the day with so many more eyes on this one. Let's see what the actual dollar volume on this one. Only $500 million, $524 million volume I see too. And I say only, but that's kind of surprising for what this one kind of attention this one attracted, especially from yesterday when brokers were margin calling on people and not allowing them to hold into the close as of yesterday. But crazy to see a gap up still here. Coming into this pre-market, just hard selling right out of the open, trying to find buyers, trying to find support to reclaim VWAP. And watching this one after I was done, I think I was done with TLRY or just I had a break or lull in the action. HX, of course, is in the corner of my chart. I see the SSR pop up in the corner. pretty much immediately perfectly at that 9:45 time frame. And I go, okay, this could be pretty interesting. 9:45 time frame is what we look for on that dip and rip, especially, okay, now it's holding that 17 level pretty decently. We're getting a nice little amount of consolidation-ish building with a little bit more green candles coming to the upside. If 18 starts to chip away on the ask, I certainly could see myself getting an entry. That move could be quick. I wasn't looking for anything crazy beyond VWAP. I knew, especially with how volatile this thing was, be careful in your size, be careful in how you're trading this thing, and respect those risk levels. Didn't put a stop in on this one, just because I was more with the thought process of, okay, maybe I could be ready on this one before it cracks that low a day and get a little bit of non-slippage of where maybe I would take a stop and just kind of sat back and then watched my nice exit just chip away, and I would have had to take a super stupid fill all the way 16.3-ish area potentially from there, but ended up, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that exit for what it was, because I did end up taking a bit of a farther loss from maybe where I could have if I did have a stop in there, because it wasn't crazy fast after that pull. You could see it with this volume where it was too. I think a lot more people were thinking the same thing on that dip and rip type of setup, that where they got stopped as a long, trying to play this to any amount of reclaim to VWAP for a trade like that, trying to squeeze any amount of shorts. And I know shorts would have loved it too, say, hey, can I get another opportunity to short into a top here, even if it's right at VWAP? I think that would have made a lot of people happy. But just didn't happen. Continual bleeding and dying off today to 51% in the red, and ending up, for how wide of a body this candle was on the daily too, it's funny to see that it's still pretty close to where it was trading the past 2 days here. Man, this thing was absolutely volatile. That is one for the history books. Yeah, no shares to short anywhere either, too, for how low of a float this thing was. Just under 7% loss, so having to equate that to, it was pretty similar dollar position size compared to TLRY, but of course, yeah, tough to take a double percentage-wise loss on this one for what was a respectable, risk parameter set of what I was looking for, a risk-reward type of setup. But then trading the chart at least pretty well on TLRY, and then having to take a red day today for what those two trades were. Oh, that's trading. DWAC was the next one we got to talk about. Just ludicrous. So apparently merging with the Trump media company, which ends up putting this thing right now 360% in the green, 356% it shows here on Thinkorswim. Pretty ludicrous. This is the 5-minute. Let's do... Oh my gosh, for how many times all these millionaire guys in the chats rooms and the editors getting short this thing. I think Jack number 2 was actually short during pre-market, and I did not see any specific cover orders in the chat that he listed, and I think he took a pretty substantial loss on this one for how high it continued to go and go and go. And just, how many halts here do we have? Especially one right in here. Man, just ludicrous. Even, yeah, I know all the editors who were saying, I'm short this thing and I made a little bit, but I'm scared of it. I'm just not continuing to trade it anymore. This will certainly be an educational watch for me tomorrow. Just ludicrous to see these things. Exciting that they're back in the market to see them, but just ludicrous. WTRH I wanted to mention as well too. This one has been on watch for me, still on my kind of follow-up scanner watches for still holding these at least price level for the meantime, not necessarily putting in a decent amount of volume. And the move today, of course, not coming on a lot of volume, which we need that push, the volume push, to get these things going continually in the right direction to cause the further snowball accumulation of these trades to happen. Of course, missed the move here leading into the lunch session and the afternoon session. So hard for me to kind of get any entry around here to say, even if this thing does break out to the upside of 168 here, hard for me to say that I want to get an entry, because I really want to be selling into that. Same thing with TLRY, of these areas are where you have to be, these specific trades as well. You've got to be in the move before they happen. So I mean, the trade entry here for this one today too is it's get this perk above VWAP with a little bit of volume consolidating. Now more volume is slamming this thing to the upside. That's where your entry point is, around here, this 148-ish area, and 1.5 kind of at the latest, if you're able to get a dip bottom here as well. Potentially trading it on there, and maybe holding it for the overnight here if it starts to push higher. A little bit of a slower mover, kind of choppier price action, not the most crazy volatile, as you can see by for how it likes to block trade to 166, 164, 165. Hard there. That is yeah, lackluster volume is just kind of a downer sometimes with that. MGTX, I exited my last one share today. It had a little bit closer of a perk to 22 too, but again, just no volume. Don't really understand the reason for this move. I traded it yesterday with 2 shares just kind of for funsies to see if it did go higher, and it did, and then it pulled back hard, back under VWAP, and just sold around this area for close out my $1.50 profit trade on that one. So is whatever. I don't know the thesis for it, but glad to be a part of it for whatever education it did provide, maybe subconsciously for that. Yeah, I'm certainly going to stay away from it from now with no volume on it. SGOC, I mean, good for you, Bryce Tui. He had an absolute hard-on for this one. Not only in pre-market, talking about small cap rockets this morning, but he was talking about it yesterday in small cap rockets for how hard he was watching this thing. He wanted to get like close to 100K position size on this one. And the price action certainly worked in his favor right out of the gate in the morning. Props to him. There was, looking at the daily chart, where's the volume to support that? There's no news catalyst thesis for that, but I can kind of get that little abstract mindset to see, okay, it's a former runner. It's put in these little former one and done spikes. It's kind of still building around this area. It's putting in a few little higher lows here. Something could potentially be brewing with this one. And yeah, it happened today, but man, that style of trade, you just got to be exactly what Bryce Tui is doing. He was in this thing 4 or 5 days and waiting for this specific move to happen. That's a lot of mental capital just for this a little over 10%, $7 to $8 if you're perfect on that type of trade. Props to him. But just good to note going forward for the future. BTZI, I also wanted to mention. This one I've been talking about for a while. Tried to trade it, was focusing on other stuff within these past few days here, but this nice little run up with decent little price action that's continuing to gap up, hold nicely, bring in volume. Today out of the morning, you get another little perk, pull back to VWAP, but again, creates a new high, 18.28. Then roll over, break to the downside of VWAP, panic starts to roll in, and then it just does not become any amount of panic whatsoever, just a slow bleeding and continually progressing by dip buyers trying to pick a bottom randomly. It's like shorts trying to pick a top randomly on DWAC today. It's just continually getting beaten down. I think Tim Sykes got screwed over on this one trying to buy a dip bottom, but it's just like just so unfortunate that it didn't have an awesome straight line panic dip buy, provide a nice opportunity to get in to trade it to the upside. It's just, this is kind of becoming a theme that just these stupid and drawn out slow dips, slow panics that just eat away at the chart. They look great on the daily for what this red day was. A huge volume coming into today. Obviously dip buyers trying to buy that dip bottom, but it's just like stupid. And then OCGN, I got out of my last, had 10 shares, broke this little bit of a trend line here that we were developing from the bottom of this gap down day. So this little arbitrary trend line I kind of drew here that I was putting in from these days. Something's going on these days. Yeah, as it was kind of developing on there a little bit, it was just just continually bouncing, and just holding on that line a little bit, and then strength just did not want to come in to support this thing anymore. So I still got to get used to that swing trading. This is totally educational. That's why I was keeping these position sizes so small on these ones. This is, of course, still educational. I didn't think after that hard sell-off today, the day after my real trade on this one, after I was locking in profits, I knew too that, okay, now this is getting a far less probable trade to happen. It's just very speculative of kind of finding any amount of technical level you can hold on to say, okay, the trade thesis could still be on this one. It could still try to gap a little bit higher, move a little bit more, collect a little bit more attention, but just nothing really was coming on this one. So maybe it piddles around a little bit more. Maybe it gets a perk back above $9 at some point. If it starts to gap closer to that $10 mark, I would certainly keep my attention back on it, start to trade it potentially once again, looking for maybe even a little bit larger of a position size for a swing trade on this one. For the former runnerness of it, forget the float on this one. If it's a crazy low floater, it's an American Biotech, pretty high float on this one, so not likely to just squeeze crazy, especially in this type of market as of right now. But yeah, cut it for just whatever loss that was. Nothing crazy, nothing hard, especially P&L wise for how small that trade was. But continuing to learn with that. NAKD, just tough. It is. She is looking pretty sad. I think tomorrow might be the day I end up cutting this one as it's breaking this little 65 mark here. Thought a similar thing with OCGN. Just, as the first trade entry, okay, it's building nicely with a little bit of volume here. It's holding these higher lows. That 60-cent mark, of course, I mentioned a while back, acted like a little bit for a very long time, acted some amount of support. Resistance just became a very influential price point for this ticker. Bounced again a little bit off of there and thought we were going to get potentially closer to try it for a higher mark than what it did back in September 28 here. Maybe try for an attempt at that $1 whole mark, that whole dollar mark at one. But just, again, no volume, very speculative, not based on any amount of trade thesis or like news catalyst type of that it has to happen in a certain time frame, just kind of guessing or if it's going to happen then too. So yeah, tomorrow may be the day I cut it there. If it breaks hard below the 65-cent mark, then I will certainly cut that. But just still managing it right now. And of course, still a relatively low position size on that one for what this trade requires. That is all I got. Watch list going in for tomorrow. Preliminary right now, watching LMFA. I think TUI is as well, pretty hard. Like the daily. I do not like the intraday. I'm not a fan of this choppy, just kind of inconsistent price action, lackluster volume on these types of days too, but I can't disregard the daily for what was a pretty crazy voluminous first day and just continuing to grind up higher and higher. We're seeing these just crazy grinders with the DWACs and the HUDIs and the HXs on really not continuing volume coming into these ones, but price action, you can't disregard it. You can't deny what price action's doing, continuing to climb higher and higher and higher. So especially as it's potentially, if we get a I'm like having Tourette's right there. Potentially, if we get that gap up going into tomorrow, we're going to be up above some nice little price levels here from the past few trading days, especially too, and on, technically a little bit based on the daily. Could be a nice little trade there if it wants to attract some volume. Is this yeah, especially with this low floater, 4.9 million could be pretty nice, and the former runnerness of it too. Checking those boxes in that regard. Of course, DWAC, we got to watch just for education's sake. Keep that in the corner of the chart. And my heart wants to say keep an eye on RDUS. Like Chris mentioned on yesterday too, like he was pointing out the institutional ownership on this one is pretty ridiculous. It had pretty slow bleeding and dying off pretty far distance from VWAP as well too, going to the close from Wednesday's trading day. A little bit of a recovery day today. Call it a rest day. Call it what you want. Not as much volume as that first initial day. And of course, this one isn't the most volatile, not the most direct mover that, my style of scalpy trade is. I want to be in the move and I want to see 20% move immediately happen after my entry. That's my style of trading, my personality. I want to be in and out. But this one may incur a little bit of a slower time frame build for just the characteristic of how it trades. If it starts to hard to say when and where any specific key area is technically. It does have on the volume profile, it shows a little bit of accumulation harder within, call it 22 to 20.5-ish area as potentially the key area. If it's going to get there, going to gap to that area potentially, or build with strength to there, that will be the range really of key area where the most amount of influence would come on this one. If any amount of bag holders or shorts are still playing with this one from that first day, that could get this thing going squirrely for that. But it's also got news going forward too, a little bit of positive phase 3 top line data from trial with another science company, whatever that means. That came out this morning. That came out yesterday after the close and also this morning too. So call it another addition to a potential catalyst for this one to go to the upside, but still just preliminary, nothing convicted in me in it as of right now. But that is all I had. Little red day, but I mean, that's trading. That's just part of it. Not mad at myself in any way, shape, or form. I think it's still, for me, I grade myself an A rating for how I was mentally, especially continually eliminating more and more of the distractions, just getting more into my own mindset. And I love the understanding the perspectives of others and seeing how they play out after the fact. But when I'm in it, when it's market time, it's just got to be me, and the noise Even if it is there and present, I've got to learn to continue to eliminate it and just listen to that one voice in my head too, because that's the only way this is going to continue going forward in the future. This is the only way that the trades are actually going to happen the way they should, not just how somebody says they should or says they shouldn't, in a sense too. So that is it. I thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.